there is who you are biologically, and there is who you think you are psychologically. Psychologists call it the ego.
Yes.
And it's gotten such a bad rap over the years, just like Zangoma. Yeah, but when you say ego, it's more like it's this bad thing that you need to get rid of, and. The ego is necessary. And without the ego, you cannot perceive life. Therefore, you cannot function psychologically in society. So you need to have a sense of who you are. You need it. And that's where identities become critical. And that's where the correct identities become critical. Because you can't be at a genetic level, let's say, for instance, Swati, and then psychologically you are British. Already you can see
harmony and already identity crisis.
Well, depending on how honest you are to yourself, some people call it life's problems, but that disharmony will always create issues for yourself. And then you add the precious awareness of spirituality, because not everyone is spiritual. Yeah, and when people talk about spirituality, I feel scared more than anything, because they talk about it from someone's experience and not their own. So spirituality becomes something that used to happen, something that happens in a building, in a particular day of the week, etc. and so forth. Whereas spirituality is, at a DNA level, your cells would not be alive if there was no spirit. Then you take that all the way through to other aspects of our lives. But I think what I have observed is, in as much as there's a spiritual dimension to life, there's also a beyond spirit dimension. And this is where I see Amadlozi. This is where I look up into the sky and I see the galaxy and I'm like, yeah, that's beyond spirit.
This is where we come to speaking of Lamayeza Leswasebendisao. You speak spirit.
So for now, let's put these four in place. There's physical dimension, there's a psychological dimension, and there's a spiritual dimension, and there's a beyond spirit dimension, right? So there's four for now. With the time that we have. And then remember, at conception, there was a conversation that said. And this is why I love when I listen to the story of Jesus, because it's almost as if someone wants us to share with us that conversation that happens between conception and actualization of life, that first heartbeat. But it's almost as if they did not want to give us the details. To say, Jesus was born, so the angel comes and says, you're going to bear a child who's going to die for the sins of. So the question is, okay, when was the decision made? And was he party to it? And if we were to trace that whole thing, said, okay, they say Spirit and Mary, right? It's fine.
Yes. Joseph was in the picture.
No.
But not in that.
Let's leave Joseph out of it. Let's stick to Spirit and Mary, right?
So there was just XX. There was no Y. Okay, let's leave it.
Genetically, it's not. Let me leave it there.
Yes, let's leave it. That's what I'm saying. Let's leave it.
So we take Spirit, and then we take Mary, and then we have conception, right? Before the heart starts to beat, and the heart beats first because it's the heart that needs to send life-giving energy to the whole body. So it beats first to kind of pump the blood, because remember, the blood is where life is, right? Yes. So before the first beat of the heart, there's a conversation that says, "Where na Jesus? You can go left, you can go right, but ultimately you'll end up on the cross." So for you to have a harmonious journey to the cross, you need to have a harmonious experience, which means all dimensions of your life need to align, right? Yes. How is that relevant to what we're talking about? It's relevant in that Jesus, according to the scripture, was aligned biologically, was aligned psychologically because he knew who he was, and he was who he said he was. Right? I'll take you back to, and this is where you see the importance of Joseph not being in the picture. Remember the importance of the Y chromosome and how without the Y chromosome, there's no procreation. Yes. If Jesus were to have any sort of relation with this particular Y chromosome, then it would mean he would have to be a continuation of whatever Joseph was. Physically, psychologically, spiritually, and beyond. But now, if Jesus has a relationship with the divine Y chromosome, then his continuation is of the divine procreation, if there's such a thing, right? Of the divine lineage. And that's why he had to be the Son of God. And his perception of his biology was he is the Son of God. So he was aligned. At a biological level with the spirit Y chromosome. I don't know if that's what that's the chromosome that the spirit brought, but you need that to create life. So he was aligned at a DNA level. He was aligned at a psychological level. At a spirit level, he always threw his intention to the divine purpose of God. Telling people to then, seek the kingdom of God, which says, okay, it's now the divine purpose. Don't seek all of these other things, seek the kingdom of God. And how we got evidence that Jesus was aligned biologically, psychologically, spiritually was that when the physical dimension of life ended for him, because he did die, right? He assumed a beyond spirit experience, eternity. Right? So the story of Jesus Christ becomes then a perfect example of what alignment can do for you. I'm not saying we're Christians. We just read a book and we just observed the relevance of the book. Yes. So I'm saying to you, you get biological heredity from your parents, and it's a continuation of where they left off, right? Biologically. And that's why kids are always, if you were to observe, kids are always more better looking than their parents, in my view. Because they're supposed to be the next. Especially if you were to look at them from that moment where you see a young person and you see an old person, you say, but this child looks like this Gogo, but this Gogo is a bit ugly than this young one.
Gogo ugly is age.
Well, it's an observation. I've never seen a child that is uglier than its Gogo. That's what I'm saying. But again, my emphasis is in these different dimensions of life, there needs to be alignment. Healers, by their own nature, are aligners of people's lives in a multi-dimensional way. And that's why, as a healer, you cannot be someone who's focused on the biology. Uyachatisa, uyaphalazisa, but you're not focusing on the psychological dimension of a person. You need to talk to who they think they are and how they perceive life. You need to be a psychologist, as we sang, right? But also, you need to go to the spirit level to say, ngilapha umzimba, ngilapha ingqondo, ngilapha nomoya. Then if you are lucky, you will go beyond umoya. And this is where the whole memory of this person's DNA, spiritually and physically, becomes part of the healing. With identity crisis, is that there is a lack of alignment in that regard.
Beyond.
Yeah.
It's genetics, it's biological, psychological, and spirit.
And I mean, for me, the past, I'd say the past 25 centuries, if not 30, And humans are older than that. I mean, there's a suggestion that our genome or genetics are 1.5 or whatever billion years old. And then you look at the last 25 centuries or so. That's from, I mean, I think 10 years or 5 years beyond, you know, current era. And then you start tracing year 1000 and up until 20, where are we now? 21st century. No? Is it 21st or? Yeah, 21st, whatever. But all I'm saying is that memory in our DNA is fairly fresh compared to the billion years that we used to exist for. And it was said, I think, in fact, let me not get into the scientific facts. Okay. I'm trying to take us back to, I'm trying to take us back to how the psychology has overwhelmed the biology over the past, 25 centuries. In that we've overemphasized the ego and all its different branches. Our perception of what life is. Hence, not only have we gained a lot of knowledge, but we've built knowledge centers for people to actually obtain that knowledge. And then we've built societies around those knowledge centers. Hence, if you are educated, then you are more likely to have a better life than someone which means if you've got more memory on your psychology, then you are more likely to function in a psychologically based society than someone who doesn't have. I mean, it's always been the case until recently. Recently, we're getting evidence to the contrary. You have people with PhDs and masters who are useless at life.
No, it's caught up with us.
Their psychology is full to capacity, but they cannot function because this alignment goes beyond psychology.
It's caught up with us.
Yes.
It's not even catching up.
And maybe at the risk of getting into a different dimension of our conversation, that is the fallacy of the 21st century African. In that they want to have relevance and renaissance in a society that is incorrectly organized. A society that is organized around psychology. Mm-hmm. But the wonder about the African genome, the African gene, is that it has always spoke to itself. I mean, you can go to Africans anywhere in the world. The first thing you realize with them is that they have a peculiar appearance. First and foremost, they are black. Mm-hmm. Whether too black or too light, but the bottom line is their genome speaks for itself. Mm-hmm. At a biological level. Mm-hmm. And then you wonder the rest of the package that it came with at a spiritual level. Where is it? And that's where the disorientation happens, where you find an African who emphasizes psychology, education, knowledge and all of those things.
And can speak their language.
Exactly, but they forgot their, biology, and then they forgot their spirituality, which is also encompassed in their biology, by the way. Mm. Because remember, when life is built, you get both the spirit and the biological. And then you find that Amadlozi wakhe, his origin, his roots,
his being
is always having a conversation to say, where is the alignment? Where is the alignment? And then you find those black people, shame. They are always lose the words, man, in English. But anyway, where you
they just have an identity crisis, Ketla.
They are all over.
Yes, even when they are now, circumstances happen such that they bring them back here. Even Nalakaya, they don't fit in. Lapha bahlala khona. Yes, they don't fit in wakhona lakhaya. They don't fit in nalapha bahlala khona. Ekhaya they don't fit in because it's just a misalignment. They can't reconcile the life that they have lived and this life. One. Two, there's also the language barrier. There's nothing as painful it's not just good for the person seeing it and watching it. It's also for the person experiencing it. Good, see, this is where I belong. These are my people. My spirit feels at home and is fitting here, but I cannot keep up with the conversations. So there's always also that misalignment. Good, lo moya wona ucabanga ukuthi uhappy uyafuna. This is where I could be home. This is where I could fit in, but I need to be met somehow. Now this is where the psychology comes in. I don't know this language. I also do not know this life. But this is actually so comfortable. You'll find them being the first ones wanting to sit on the floor, being the first ones to want to walk barefoot, being the first ones wanting to actually even visit the rural areas. They want that experience, and they think that it's a tourism matter. It's a spirit now drawing them to
something is calling for this alignment.
It's calling for it. But then there's that misalignment. Because mabafika lapha bakhona understand. Goes to it just there's something that feels quite off. Until they come across a healer or across umuntu wasekhaya lo wathi ukuthi this is actually what now needs to be done for this person to actually heal them. Lapho abantu they can get healed and go back to live in whatever country that they were living, and you will find that their life now is better because they have actually been able to connect and align kuhlanganisa lento lethi ngakuhlanganisa. That actually is found to be the experience. You find now good okay, Gogo, I have this problem. I'm here. I'm in the UK. I'm experiencing this, and this. What can you do for me? Okay, this is actually what needs to be done. We'll start at the biology. Let's start there. One, they also are just misaligned. Pantu ngakuthi nje esikhathini lesiningi ababadi nalabantu bakubo. Lababati go bantu bakubo, they haven't been able to come home in so long. And it's really important to just it's so important to actually come back. That does wonders. Go back home. You are actually wanted, and not as I go to be a healer. Sometimes go to to connect and align. Now you're aligning the biology, the psychological, and the spiritual. But it's a good that story.
Great story.
That needs to happen so that then the rest of your life you can live. Especially, I think also the disconnect happens, Mkhulu, when now you also are supposed to be bringing life into this world, life in the form of children. That is also a big turnaround point for a lot of people. But it's the misalignment. That's the saddest.
Well, Gogo, I mean, I think the one thing we can take out of this part of the conversation is that, and this mustn't have okay, maybe I must not say that, but it mustn't make Africans feel any special, in that they seem to be multidimensional beings. They have the physical, the psychological, the spiritual, and the beyond. And if they don't have alignment of all these dimensions, they will always have an inflammation of some sort. Whether that inflammation is in a form of an identity crisis, that inflammation is in a form of, I mean, there's been a lot of tragedy that has befallen black people, whether slavery, colonialism. Those things, for me, point to an imbalance in the individual who's part of the society and therefore the nation.
And an imbalance that we bring in because of the memory, the biological memory now.
Exactly.
And also because of the psychological memory, also because of the spiritual memory. When There's another topic that you raised with me, but I'm hoping that another day we will discuss it. At some point you brought it up. Actually, before even into us, we spoke about it. The DNA memory.
Memory. Oh my God! It needs a whole new Sunday.
Yes.
But I think we to link it quickly with Gogo. I mean, we can always come back and talk about memory as a separate topic. But the set of instructions you get on your DNA, spiritual and physical, are actually memory. What is memory? Memory is recorded experience, right? Whether it mutates, abantwana bala endlini were always dark in complexion until a light in complexion woman was married, and then she bore, lighter complexioned kids, and then that was the mutation going forward. They're no longer dark anymore; they are lighter, But it is recorded memory. And the funny thing, and that's why I brought the aspect of the last 25 centuries, dominating our experience today more than what is beyond. Because there is more memory in your biology than there is in your psychology. And I always laugh because I think I've studied about 10 degrees, and in each and every one of them I never went beyond the first year. Yeah, I was very special. I would get distinctions for all subjects or some of them in the first year, but always when I'm supposed to move to the next year,
you go start something else.
I don't know, they have a name for it. But if you look at my UNISA records, I've got like 10 degrees. Cancelled. Because psychology is limited, right? Remember, psychology has its biological foundation in the mind, right? So your thoughts, your thinking are in direct correlation with the health of your brain. Remember, thought is a chemical reaction. I think it's MIT that says thought is an electrochemical response to stimuli, right? Although I have a different opinion, but it's an opinion. Because it's almost as if they say there has to be stimuli and then you have to think. Right?
Think if there is no stimulus.
My observation is there was something that was happening before the heart, right? So the heart starts beating. Something happens between the first beat of the heart and the formulation of the brain, right? And remember, in the womb, the brain is at its most purest. It doesn't have any memory. So it functions, whatever the cells are saying, the brain responds. So if they're saying grow, it grows. It doesn't, resist. And then that's why within the first 7 years of this brain experiencing life, it's flexible. It takes it as it gets. It doesn't hold on to anything. And that's why they say the best time to teach the kids is when the brain is still learning what is my purpose in this body, right? So what I'm saying is, what we've done, Tina, we've overlooked the memory of the DNA and overemphasized the memory of the brain. Your DNA is over 1 billion years old. All that memory is sitting in your DNA right now.
And then that is where now, it's not identity crisis.
Gogo, 1 billion years worth of memory is sitting in your genes right now.
That is why when you are now, I don't know, at a level of the awakening, you remember things that you did not experience.
If uhlambulukile,
your
brain response.
And then you are eavesdropping on conversations that you were not even a part of, that are not happening in this time. And you can't even trace, what year was this? When was this actually happening? Why am I part of a conversation? I'm listening in on a conversation that I was a part of, but not as a part of me as I am now.
That's the amazing thing, that if you let your brain be a tool of perception instead of, the reason for your perception is you get such a clarity, they call it a clarity of mind. And meditators today are so, obsessed with this clarity of mind as if it's something you can, induce. But some people who have this clarity of mind can actually see memories, tap into memories beyond their conception. And that's why you find people saying, no, in my previous life. Which previous life? All you are doing is you are such an open portal that you can actually go back a few generations, if not a few thousand generations back, and experience it as if it is existing right now.
And
it's memory.
Yeah, that is also when you find that it's difficult to get on with other people. It's difficult to be amongst people. You find that you are actually now, you become what we call a recluse. When you come out, you come out and be with people, but you just really want to go back into your space. It is a time where, but in all of it, I really, meaning ufisela ukuthi kube into ledlulayo, because it also becomes it becomes difficult to leave.
Why?
Because of this, because of the psychology you're talking about, because of the life. You can't really keep existing in that way. It makes life really difficult.
I wish for more people like that, though.
It's difficult for you. You can't wish for it's okay kube ngathi ngaba yitho ledlulayo. Base sokhala ngekuthi one wakhona kulala, you go to places, and then really sometimes then it's best to vele ungalali, because then you are,
I'm not laughing at you.
because then where you go and now is not really reconcilable. You're just and also it would be nice if when you go you come back with, because it is not magic at the end of the day. I don't know how to explain it. It's not magic, it's not magical. It's just going to experience things that have nothing to do with your life now.
But Gogo, remember, we did mention earlier, Uti, society is not organized in the most efficient way. And of late, society has placed more importance on psychological knowledge, but we are getting more evidence that it's not important. It's not as important as I mean, that kind of organizing society has almost killed our planet. Right? We have this, climate change, and soon enough, we're not going to have climate change as well. We're going to have, human change. I mean, a lot will happen. Our genes will start to mutate in response to the weather conditions. We're going to have shorter people, or too tall people, or too fat people, or too whatever. But all I'm saying is, for multidimensional beings like yourself, since you say you are a portal that goes between the different dimensions.
I'm actually still trying to understand what it is.
The multidimensionalism.
What it is, what it's about. That's what I'm trying to understand.
No, it means you are experiencing the biology, the psychology, the spirituality, and the beyond in one moment in time. I mean,
and the world does not allow for the world I live in,
because it's incorrectly organized, or maybe it's inefficiently organized. I must not say incorrect, because it would sound like I'm saying it's wrong. It's not the best way we could organize society. I mean, our houses are not built to facilitate multidimensionalism. Because there are spaces that are best for your body but are not best for your mind, are not best for your spirit. Just by the way we built our houses. And this is where sometimes when you look at African life, you're like, but how did they know a house has to be round?
Yeah.
How did they know there can't be a focal point in a room where you sleep? Because the energy will congest there. How did they know? Right? And how did they know you cannot be in a certain state of sleep a few inches above ground? That state is best experienced on the floor. Because what it does is it taps into the energy of the soil and it draws the vibrations from there. But if you are inches above, there's going to be a blockage. It is going to float and it's going to take away from you. And that's why when you wake up from a bed, you are more tired than when you wake up from the floor.
There's a barrier to actually.
How did these Africans know?
Oh my word, yeah. And also, but that's also a natural thing. Even our bodies know it. Well, some of our bodies know it. When I'm growing up, when I was most tired, when I need most to rest, I know I need to sleep on the floor. I've known that. If I sleep on the floor,
it's got a scientific thing to it. It's a chemistry thing. And if you were to study sleep and what happens to a person during sleep, because there's about 3 to 5 stages of sleep, depending on how good you are at sleeping. Most of us are very terrible. And it's not because we are terrible, it's because of the resources we're given to actually experience sleep. Okay. First and foremost, it's believed that you have to sleep in a certain room. The house is all different dimensions, and you have to buy a bed. And funny enough, in that bedroom, there has to be a wardrobe with clothes. What is the need for your clothes in the same space that you sleep? Shouldn't there be a bed only?
Or just your sleeping space?
Yeah. You go there to sleep and do nothing else. But how society is organized now is, and people pay a lot of money to get in the same space as your clothes, which are alive, by the way. The bath. Remember, the bath is where you cleanse off, dead energy and, dead tissue in your skin. Hotels are a congestion of all those energies. And then they put a nice white linen bed there and say, sleep. And then that, I'm going holiday, ngizizwa refreshed. Kanjani? Some of us, we go back home, emakhaya, to Urondo, Gogo, to sleep on the floor. And it feels like I've gotten a whole new body altogether. And we sleep next to that smell, with, that sound. I don't know if you've ever had a dream over the sound of cows and the smell of cow dung. Upupe. Never upupe imali or big house. I mean, those things are irrelevant to that space. But it's more like it opens you up multidimensionally. It sends you back. Either it sends you forward to seeing the future, or it sends you back to seeing the past. But it all has to do, Gogo, with this multidimensionalism. And how we got here is, I was trying to say to you, this yearning of plugging into society, is there another word for illusion? What is the other word for illusion?
Yeah.
Lying to yourself? Yeah. Don't, as a multidimensional being, do not seek to fit in. But always make sure you reconcile yourself. Because if you don't fit in, you start to isolate. And if you're not aware of the isolation, you'll end up, as we say, uhleli lapha in your own, uhleli endumbeni, uhleli namatambo. People who are looking at you from the physical perspective, but uhleli nezinto ey'file lapha namathambo ezinja, ukhuluma iwani, ushisa utshani, ubhemane, all those things. It doesn't look normal. But you have to reconcile yourself. And this is where You yourself has to be the physicist, psychologist, the spiritualist, and the beyond for yourself only, but also for people around you.